They called me easygoing. What they meant was, I never pushed back. Then I spoke the truth, just once. And no one was ready for what came next. People like to think silence means peace. That if you just keep your head down and go along, things will work out. I believed that for years. I made it my whole personality, really. The quiet one. The guy who does not stir the pot. The one who smiles when his name is skipped and says it's fine when it is clearly not. At work, it started small. Someone else claimed credit for a project I had stayed late 3 nights in a row to finish. My boss glanced at me like he expected a reaction. I gave him none. Just nodded, even as my throat tightened. Afterward, he clapped the other guy on the back and said he had leadership potential. I laughed along, pretending the words did not feel like sandpaper in my ears. At home, it was more the same. My wife, Jenna, called me the Rock. Said she could always count on me to keep things calm. What she meant was, I never called her out. Not when she spent weekends with her friends while I stayed back with the kids. Not when she rolled her eyes at my ideas or made decisions without me. I let it slide. Always figured it was better to keep the peace than to fight over things that did not really matter. I told myself silence was strength. That the real heroes were the ones who bore their burdens quietly. But something I have learned? Carry enough weight quietly and it starts to bury you. I remember this one time, we were at a family barbecue, Jenna's side. Her brother cracked a joke about me being whipped. Something about how I had probably asked permission to bring the potato salad. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. What else could I do? Stand up and say, actually, I made the salad because your sister has not cooked in weeks and I thought your kids should eat something besides chips? No, that would have been making a scene. So I let the joke pass. Like I always did. And it is funny. People start to think that if you do not protest, you must be okay. That silence is agreement. That maybe you are just less driven, less passionate, less deserving of respect. But I felt everything. I felt every skipped, thank you, every look that said, you do not matter. I stored them like little pebbles in my chest, thinking I could handle the weight. Until I couldn't. Because there was a moment, one clear, sharp moment, when I realized the silence had not made me strong. It had made me disappear. And someone was about to find that out the hard way. You get good at hiding things when you make silence a habit. You learn how to breathe through the sting of being overlooked. You become fluent in nodding while your insides scream. I remember being a kid and watching my dad stare at the dinner table like it had betrayed him. My mom would talk over him, laugh with her friends on the phone, plan everything without once asking what he thought. And he just nodded. Cut his food into tiny pieces like that was all he was allowed to do. I learned early that men like us were supposed to take it. That speaking up was weakness, not strength. So I swallowed it. I swallowed it when my best friend, Mark, introduced my design as something we cooked up together, even though he had not touched a line of code. The client clapped him on the back, told him it was brilliant. I bit my tongue so hard it ached. Told myself, let him have it. What matters is the team. I swallowed it when Jenna forgot our anniversary. No card. No dinner. Nothing. I watched her scroll through Instagram all evening, smiling at memes. She said, oh shoot, was that today? And I said, it's okay. She kissed my forehead like I was a puppy that had waited patiently at the door. I swallowed it when our daughter, Sophie, asked why mommy never came to her dance recitals. I told her, mommy's busy with work, even though I had no idea what Jenna was busy with anymore. She had not worked in almost a year. Just stayed in bed until noon, claimed she was tired, then disappeared into her phone or her wine glass until the day was over. People ask how marriages fall apart. It is not always cheating or some huge blow-up. Sometimes it is silence. Quiet disappointment stacked one on top of the other until the foundation cracks. You do not even hear it crumble. You just wake up one day and realize you are standing in ruins. But I kept telling myself it was noble, that I was protecting something, our family, our image, the fragile piece that held us together. Then came the night I found the messages. Jenna had left her phone on the counter. I was not looking for anything. I was making tea, cleaning up before bed. The screen lit up with a name I did not recognize. I glanced, expecting maybe a friend or coworker. But it was not that. The words on the screen? They were not about work. In the photo attached, it left no doubt. I stood there for a long time, phone still buzzing on the counter, the kettle whistling behind me. I did not say anything. I turned off the stove, made the tea, carried it upstairs like nothing had happened. Because that is what I did. But something inside me shifted that night. I still stayed quiet. But it was no longer out of strength. It was out of calculation. Because if the past had taught me anything, it was that nobody noticed the quiet guy until he decided to speak. And I was almost ready. There were always rules. Unspoken ones. Like how Jenna could cancel plans last minute without warning. But if I forgot to grab almond milk, it turned into a week-long freeze-out. Or how at work, I was expected to fix the bugs, stay late, and never complain. But when someone else pushed a deadline, they were called leaders who prioritized balance. I started keeping score in my head, not because I wanted to be petty, but because I needed to remind myself that I was not crazy, that what I was feeling was real. The imbalance, the quiet theft of dignity. It was happening. My boss once told me I was a great utility guy. Not brilliant, not someone with vision, just someone who got things done. The way he said it, you would think he was handing me a compliment. Jenna said something similar once. We were at a dinner party, one of those neighborhood things with too much wine and too many forced laughs. Someone asked what I did, and before I could answer, she jumped in and said, "Oh, he's in tech. He's really dependable. Not talented, not successful, just dependable." Like I was a dishwasher. And still, I stayed quiet. Because if I spoke up, it would make her look bad. That was the lie I told myself. That my silence was for the greater good. For her. For our daughter. For the house, and the bills, and the image. Even when I knew I was disappearing inch by inch. The messages on her phone were not new. The guy, Greg, was someone from her yoga class. I remembered him vaguely. Smug smile. Too many tattoos for someone who taught hot yoga to bored suburban moms. The worst part? She was not even hiding it well. It was like she had assumed I would never look. Never ask. Because I never had. I replayed conversations in my head. All the nights, she came home late. The sudden interest in her appearance. The constant texting. How she laughed more with her phone than she ever did with me. And still, I said nothing. That was my talent. But that week, I started to make a plan. Not for revenge. For clarity. Because if I was going to speak, I wanted every word to matter. I wanted it to land like truth, not bitterness. Like a mirror shoved in front of faces too used to looking away. I started gathering things. Screenshots. Bank statements. Notes on missed birthdays and ignored milestones. At work, I documented the projects I had built from scratch. Quietly. Carefully. I was not going to yell. That was never my way. But the day was coming. And when it did, I would not hold back. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember that clearly because Tuesdays were the worst. Middle of the week. Nothing to look forward to, and just enough pressure to feel like you were always behind. I was at work, sitting through another useless meeting where people talked in circles and the loudest voices took credit for everything. I had just shared an idea. Nothing earth-shattering, but solid. A better way to streamline our onboarding flow. As usual, no one reacted. Dead silence. Then, 5 minutes later, Brad repeated the exact same thing, word for word, and everyone suddenly acted like he had discovered fire. Brilliant, they said. I watched the room, waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge that I had said it first. Nobody did. Afterward, Brad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "We make a great team, huh?" That was it. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and started typing. Not code. A letter. To HR. To the director. To every name I had quietly served under for years. I laid out every detail, projects, emails, timestamps. A cold, clear list of what had happened and who had been taking credit. I did not send it. Not yet. That night, Jenna told me she was going away for the weekend. Yoga retreat. She said it like it was normal. Like we were roommates coordinating calendars. I asked if she needed a ride. She said no. Greg was picking her up. Just like that. His name dropped in the open. She looked at me like she was daring me to react. Maybe she wanted a fight. Something messy. A reason to play victim. But I just nodded and said, "Drive safe." Inside, though, I was done. I waited until she left, then pulled out the folder I had been building for weeks. Not just about the affair. That was part of it, sure. But this was bigger. It was every time I had let myself be erased. Photos of birthday parties where I was behind the camera, never in the shot. Emails from school with my name left off the emergency contact list. A therapy receipt from when I tried to fix myself, thinking maybe I was the problem. And her phone. That stupid phone. I took screenshots of everything. I sent the HR letter. Then I printed copies. One for her. One for her parents, since they always treated me like the invisible son-in-law. And one for Sophie. Sealed. For when she was old enough to understand. It was not revenge. It was documentation. Proof that I had been here. That I had mattered. I stood in our kitchen that night, staring at the clock as the minutes dragged by, knowing she would be gone for 2 days. It was the perfect time to finally speak. Saturday morning came quiet and gray. The kind of morning that feels hollow, like the world is holding its breath. Jenna was gone. Her retreat, or whatever it really was, started Friday night, and I had the house to myself. I sat at the dining room table. No TV, no distractions. Just me, a stack of papers, and the hum of the refrigerator kicking on every few minutes. Around noon, I called her parents. Her mom answered. I could hear their dog barking in the background and some daytime talk show playing too loud. I told her I needed to drop something off. She sighed, probably expecting it to be some favor. Maybe fixing their printer again. But when I showed up, I handed her an envelope. Said nothing. Just waited. She opened it slowly, I scanning the first page, then darting toward her husband in the kitchen. What is this? She asked, voice tight. I just looked at her. Proof, I said, of everything you have ignored for years. She called after me as I walked down the steps. Her husband stepped into view, frowning, but I did not look back. Next stop, Jenna's best friend, Marcy. Marcy always acted like she had my back. Smiled to my face, called me sweet, but I knew she had been covering for Jenna. I handed her the second copy. She said, "Is this a joke?" I told her, not anymore. By evening, I was back at the house. Sophie was upstairs with headphones on, FaceTiming with her friend. I had not told her anything. Not yet. Then the doorbell rang. Jenna, back early. And she was not alone. Greg stood behind her, arms crossed like he belonged there. She walked in without asking. Looked around like she expected a mess, maybe even broken things. Instead, she found everything neat, clean, calm. Where's Sophie? She asked, her voice low. I told her she was fine. Upstairs. Greg looked me over, clearly bracing for some big dramatic showdown. But I just handed her the envelope. She hesitated. Greg reached for it first, but I stopped him with a look. This is not for you, I said. She opened it. Started reading. Page by page, her face shifted. From smug to confused to pale. This is an invasion, she muttered. No, I said. This is the truth. Every line you crossed. Every time you left me standing there, hoping you would notice. Every choice you made while assuming I would never say a word. Greg backed up a little, suddenly uncomfortable. I walked over to the front door, opened it, and motioned. You can leave now, I said to them both. Jenna's mouth opened, like she had something to say. Some excuse. Some story. But I had already closed the door. Behind her. I thought the hardest part would be the confrontation. But it wasn't. The hardest part came after the silence that followed when there was nothing left to hide behind. No routine to distract me. No quiet resentments to keep track of. Just space. Stillness. The kind that echoes through the house when you finally stop pretending everything is fine. Jenna did not call that night. Not once. But her mom did. She left a voicemail that started calm and ended in frantic half sentences. Said she had no idea Jenna was that kind of woman. Asked if we could meet. Said things had gotten out of hand. Then came the texts. From friends. Coworkers. Even Brad, the guy who stole my idea in that meeting, suddenly remembered I existed. He wanted to grab lunch and clear the air. I ignored them all. Because something in me had changed. I was not interested in clearing anything anymore. At work, the fallout hit faster than I expected. That letter I sent? It made waves. HR called me in for a private meeting. The director looked pale when I walked in, a printed copy of my email in his hands. Turns out, I was not the only one who had kept quiet for too long. 2 more people came forward that same week. By Friday, Brad had been pulled from the onboarding team. They offered me a lead position. A real one. With my name on the documentation. I said yes. But on my terms. No more backroom promises. Everything in writing. At home, things shifted too. Sophie knew something was up. Kids always do. One night she sat beside me on the couch, curled into my side, and asked if Mommy was coming back. I told her the truth. Maybe not. But that is not your fault. And it is not mine either. She looked at me for a long time, then nodded. That night, I read to her longer than usual. Her favorite book. The one about the brave fox who stops hiding and starts building his own den, deep in the woods. Later, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee gone cold, watching the street lamp flicker. It felt like standing on the edge of something new. Not freedom, exactly, but the start of it. I knew speaking up would cost something. What I did not expect was how fast the world around me would try to shove me back into silence. Jenna came back 3 days later. Not to apologize. Not even to argue. She stood in the doorway like it was still her house. Like she could just walk in, spin a new story, and reset the clock. I did not let her in. She asked if we could talk. I said, "We already did. You just never listened." Her eyes narrowed. She said Sophie deserved both parents. Said I was being unfair, that I was damaging the family with my little stunt. That was the word she used. Stunt. As if laying bare years of quiet suffering was just a performance. I told her I had filed the papers. The truth hit her slower than I thought it would. She blinked, laughed, like maybe I was bluffing. But when I showed her the proof, the lawyer's letter, the court date, her face cracked. Greg was already gone. That much she admitted. Apparently, he had not signed up for the drama. The moment the story spread, workplace gossip, mutual friends, he ghosted her completely. She stood on the porch for a long time, not saying anything, maybe waiting for me to invite her back in. I didn't. And when she finally walked away, it felt like a knot I had carried for years finally came loose. But the aftermath kept coming. Her family called daily. Her brother accused me of destroying her life. My own parents, who had always stayed out of our marriage, now suddenly had opinions. My mom asked if I could forgive and move on. She said everyone makes mistakes. I told her this was not a mistake. It was a pattern. She did not like that answer. People do not like it when the quiet one changes the script. They want you back in the box they built for you. Easy, predictable, silent. But I had burned that box. And in its ashes, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not anger, not sadness. Control. The thing about truth? Once you let a little out, the rest starts clawing its way up too. People started calling me with stories. A former coworker messaged me on LinkedIn. Said he had always known something was off with Brad and the way management treated the quiet guys. Another woman, someone I barely knew, emailed to say she had seen Jenna and Greg together a year ago, out of town, looking too close to be just friends. Even her best friend, Marcy, the one I handed the envelope to, cracked. She showed up at my door with eyes red from crying, saying she had not known the full extent. Claimed she just thought Jenna was unhappy and Greg was a phase. Then she said something that hit me sideways. She used to brag about how you would never leave, Marcy whispered. Said you were too passive, too loyal. Loyal. That word used to feel like a badge of honor. Now it felt like a collar. I thanked Marcy and closed the door. Then I sat in the living room for a while, staring at the wedding photos still on the mantel. We looked happy. But I remember that day vividly, the way Jenna had snapped at the photographer for getting her bad side, how I had joked to lighten the mood, and how she had rolled her eyes, muttering, "You were always trying to fix things." I used to think that was a compliment. Now, I saw it for what it was. She had never wanted me to fix anything. She wanted me to stay out of the way. Later that night, I found a box in the back of the closet. Stuff she had hidden, old receipts, birthday cards from Greg, even a hotel key. My hand shook as I sifted through it, not from rage, but from the realization that she had been living a separate life for much longer than I had dared to believe. I could have destroyed her reputation. I could have exposed everything to everyone. But I didn't. Because what mattered now was not what they thought of her. It was what I knew about myself. And I was done being the man who stayed silent just to be liked. It was a week before the court date. Jenna showed up again, this time alone. No makeup, hair tied back, wearing the same hoodie she used to sleep in when we were still pretending to be happy. She looked smaller, quieter. I let her speak. She said she was sorry. Not for what she did, exactly, but for how it all unfolded. Said she never meant to hurt me. That she felt like she had been drowning for years. That Greg had just been a distraction, not something serious. I stayed quiet and let her fill the silence. She said she missed the way I used to make her feel safe. Said she realized now that she took that for granted. Said she wanted to fix things. And then she said the thing that almost broke me. I never thought you'd actually leave. That was the moment I knew she still did not get it. This was never about revenge, or making a scene, or trying to hurt her the way she hurt me. It was about truth. I looked her in the eye and said what I had waited years to say. I was never angry that you stopped loving me. I was angry that you thought I did not matter. Her eyes filled, but I did not flinch. I told her the papers would go through. There would be no fighting over the house. No smear campaigns. No dragging each other through mud. Just clean lines. I asked her if she understood. She nodded, tears falling quietly. As she stood to leave, she turned back one last time and said, "You were always the better person." Maybe that was supposed to be a compliment, but all I could think was, then why did it take losing me to see it? The door closed behind her, and with it, the last piece of the life I used to beg to keep together. For the first time, I did not feel sad. I felt weightless. The court hearing was short, clean, no drama. I signed the papers with steady hands. Jenna barely looked up. Her lawyer did most of the talking. Mine nodded, confirmed the terms. No child custody battle, no property fights. Just signatures, stamps, and the final unraveling of a marriage built on silence. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, just honest. Like the world had stopped pretending to. I went home and took the wedding photo off the mantle. Not in anger. Just because it no longer belonged there. I boxed up the reminders, the matching mugs, the anniversary cards, the dried bouquet she insisted on keeping. All of it, gone. I took Sophie to the park that evening. We sat on the swings, side by side. She asked me if things would go back to normal. I told her the truth. No. But that's okay. We are building something new now. She nodded. Quiet. Thoughtful. She is stronger than I ever was at her age. Back home, I turned on some music, not background noise this time. Real music. Something with words I wanted to hear. I opened a fresh notebook and started writing. Not a plan. Not a checklist. Just words. My words. No more swallowed truths. No more quiet tolerance passed off as maturity. No more disappearing into the background. I do not know what comes next. Maybe it is messy. Maybe it is lonely. But it is mine. And that is more than I ever had while keeping the peace. For the first time, I feel free.